I used to measure progress in hours. If I put in more time, I expected more income. If a week felt heavy, I assumed the numbers would reflect it. If I worked a weekend, I expected some visible reward. For a while, that logic made sense. Time felt like the lever. More time meant more output. More output meant more chances to earn. More chances meant more income. Clean, linear, predictable. And then something shifted. I remember noticing that I could double my hours and barely move the income line. The week would feel full, completely full, but the results wouldn't stretch with it. That's when I started realizing something uncomfortable. There's a phase in building income where time stops being the main variable. At the beginning, time is powerful because everything is fragile. No system yet. No stored trust. No accumulated momentum. If you don't show up, nothing moves. In that stage, time and income are tightly connected. You are the engine. Your calendar is the income driver. But that relationship doesn't scale forever. Eventually, the bottleneck stops being time. It becomes structure. You can feel it when your schedule is packed, but the growth is flat. When you're busy, but not expanding. When you're tired, not because things are exploding, but because they're maintaining. That's the signal. When your calendar is full, but your income is stable, time has stopped being the growth lever. That realization is unsettling, because time feels controllable. You can add hours. You can wake up earlier. You can stay online longer. Structure is different. Structure forces you to ask harder questions. Where does attention convert? Where does effort accumulate? Where does income persist? Time can increase activity. Structure determines amplification. I didn't see that at first. I kept trying to win with endurance. I treated longer weeks like strategic decisions. I confused visible effort with structural progress. But income systems don't reward visible effort. They reward aligned effort. There's a big difference. Aligned effort compounds. Misplaced effort circulates. And circulation feels productive because it's exhausting. You finish the day drained. You check tasks off. You answer messages. You ship something, but income barely changes. That's when the frustration starts creeping in. Not dramatic frustration, just quiet tension. You start thinking, why does this feel heavy but not expansive? Because expansion isn't coming from time anymore. Once structure becomes the bottleneck, adding time only increases friction. This is the phase where many entrepreneurs plateau. Not because they lack discipline, not because they lack ambition, but because they're still optimizing a variable that's already maxed out. Time is finite. Even if you stretch it, even if you sacrifice for it, even if you burn for it, at some point, you cannot add more. And when income growth depends on something finite, growth slows automatically. That's math. The shift happens when income starts responding to design instead of duration. Design of offer, design of path, design of positioning, design of conversion. These don't require more time. They require better placement. Placement is uncomfortable because it doesn't feel intense. You can't measure it in hours. You measure it in clarity. And clarity is quiet work. This is where time quietly demotes itself. You still need it. You still work. But it's no longer the multiplier. It becomes maintenance. The multiplier becomes alignment. I noticed this most clearly when stepping away. There were weeks where I worked aggressively and saw little movement. And there were weeks where I adjusted something small, positioning, pathway, offer clarity, and income shifted without adding hours. That contrast teaches you something fast. Income doesn't scale with time. It scales with how well time is directed. That's the difference between working longer and building leverage. Working longer expands capacity. Better structure expands impact. Capacity caps out. Impact compounds. Once you feel that difference, your questions change. Instead of asking, "How many hours can I give this?" you start asking, "If I removed 20% of my time, what would break?" Whatever breaks reveals what still depends on you. Whatever continues reveals where structure is forming. And that's when the game shifts. Time becomes an input, not a strategy. You stop worshiping productivity. You start respecting design. This is also when you become more selective. You realize that not all time produces equal return. An hour refining the path might generate more income than 10 hours creating more output. But refining feels slower. So most people default back to motion, because motion feels like progress. But motion without amplification eventually collapses under its own weight. That's why growth often stalls right before leverage emerges. The builder phase runs on time. The next phase runs on architecture. And architecture doesn't respond to urgency. It responds to precision. The moment time stops being the main variable is the moment income starts demanding better structure. That's not a failure. It's an evolution. It means you've reached the edge of effort-based growth. And from here forward, the constraint isn't how long you can work. It's how intelligently your effort is placed. Once that lands, you stop chasing longer days. You start building days that echo. That's when income finally begins expanding without demanding more of your life in return.